I'm Calivan and welcome to Bar Better. This series is aimed at new players and hopes to fill in some of the knowledge gaps that aren't covered by basic tutorials or more advanced guides. Today we're just going to keep it quick and easy and go over some cool stuff that you might be unaware of. This isn't top 10 territory, nor is it important tips to win every game. Just some handy bits of assorted info that you might find useful. At some point you probably thought it might be a good idea to test out something in a single player sandbox, but you don't want to have to play through a whole game to do so. Good news, this is totally possible with just a tiny bit of setup. First, fire up the game and click the skirmish button. Choose a map, delete any AI players that are present and add a new inactive AI. This bot does not build anything, it just stands there and lets you get on with it. Once you're in the game, there are 5 very useful commands you can use. You can enter them by just pressing the enter key for chat, typing a / directly followed by the command. The first is /cheat. This does nothing on its own, but it enables the cheat mode and lets you activate the further commands. Now you can use no cost. This sets the metal, energy and build cost requirements of all units and structures to 0, meaning they're instantly created without the need for resources or waiting. Very useful for testing, but a word of caution, units and structures created this way remember their 0 cost, and as such repairs on them are instant. The next most useful command is Global LOS. This removes the fog of war and allows you and your units to see everything. Very handy when combined with the next command, God Mode. God Mode lets you control everything on the map, even if you don't own it, and includes that inactive AI bot's commander. You can even build a base for him if you like, produce some units and set up a little fight. It's a bit of a hack, and as such it's got a few quirks. Unowned construction turrets won't automatically assist and some of the features are a bit off. Again, useful for testing, but don't be surprised if you notice a bit of odd behaviour. The final command you might need is /give. This lets you spawn units at your cursor position. The thing here is you need to know the short name for a unit. There is a file within the Beyond All Reason GitHub repo that contains all of these codes. I'll pop a link down to it in the description. If you used to play Total Annihilation, then you can often guess these codes as they are based off the old TA unit names. In Total Annihilation, bots were called K-bots, so if you want to spawn an Armada Advanced Construction bot, you would type give ACK, with ACK standing for Advanced Construction K-bot. This list does contain a bunch of stuff that doesn't exist anymore, but generally you'll be able to find what you need. It also contains some things that never made it past the development stage and into the game proper. This here's a transport ship, plus a cool light plasma sea turret and some handy coastal attack submarines. Interesting, yes, but also pretty useless knowledge. Okay, so that's how to test stuff. Next we'll look at some lesser known unit interactions. The reason you don't know about them is probably because they aren't very useful, but occasionally one of them might come in handy, so let's go through them. Firstly, the transport aircraft can actually move some buildings. The light transport can pick up construction turrets, which is probably the most useful of these interactions. Placement can be a bit wonky, but if you need a bit of rapid build power moved around the battlefield, then this is potentially an option. I've used it before when playing an air position and I wanted to build some forward anti-air defences. I didn't want to use a big bunch of construction planes, as my opponent would notice that and send his fighters in to put them down. So instead I decided to drop off a few turrets and then send in a single constructor to get the job started. The heavy transports can move a bit more. This includes the 2 lightest anti-ground defences, which for the core is the guard and the twin guard, and for arm is the light laser tower and the beamer. You can also pick up the light anti-air tower and the radar tower. Now I'm not sure if any of this has much in the way of practical value, but maybe one day I'll see a replay where this saves the day. Let's hope so. Speaking of transports, it's possible to set up a bit of a transfer link. It doesn't work quite as well as it does in Supreme Commander, but it's just about functional. Start by moving a unit into the pickup location. Then select your transport, pop it on repeat and give it the load order, but rather than clicking the unit, hold left click and drag a small circle around the area you want to use. Then hold shift, Press the Unload Units button, hold left click while dragging to choose a drop-off location. Congratulations, you've just created your first shuttle service. Cue the Transport Tycoon music. I think it's also worth touching on the fact that transports can pick up enemy units, although it only generally works if they're stationary. Sometimes you'll get lucky and a change in direction will be enough of a speed reduction to allow the grab to work, but more often than not your transport will just get shot down in the attempt. If you've ever wondered why the armed T2 transport has an EMP weapon and is called the Abductor, then this is the answer. Stun the unit in place and then lift it off terra firma without interference. But why? At a simple level, to kill it. If your transport dies, so does any unit it's carrying. Granted, killing one unit isn't normally much of a game changer, but if you're still in the early game and your opponent has rushed out a Tsar super heavy tank, then it might be your only option. The best thing to do is to capture it. Commanders and decoy commanders have a capture command. This takes a few seconds but permanently puts the unit under your control and can be done while that unit is trapped in the clutches of a transport. Again, not a huge benefit later in the game, but earlier on it could swing the balance. It's pretty difficult to pull off successfully, but if you don't try then it certainly won't ever happen. The capture command is also pretty unique in the fact that it can be done while you're invisible, without breaking the cloak. Paired with a sneaky hidden radar jammer, it does allow your commander to turn units to your side. Again, hard to pull off and pretty risky, but possible, and certain to cause frustration for your opponent. Remember, the radar jammer is vital here. Units with the stealthy tag won't show up on radar, but they are visible in the game world. Units with invisibility from cloak don't show in the game world, but they do show up on radar. In order to be properly hidden, you need to be both stealthy and invisible. Now, your commander actually has another button that never really gets any usage. The Restore button allows you to fill in various craters and holes made by anything with a big enough bang. Massive dip in the ground cramping your style? Just use your commander or a decoy to smooth it over. Your commander himself can actually do a bit of digging if you've got the energy to fire your D-gun on repeat. This will cost you 1000 energy per second, but it will allow you to scoop out a little trench, which, if deep enough, will actually stop pretty much anything from passing. It takes a long time to carve out something this deep, and I've never actually seen it used in a proper game, but theoretically it can act as a super wall that I'm not even sure if the Restore feature can fix. What's interesting is that the decoy D-gun on the decoy commander actually has the same digging effect, but it'll only cost you 300 energy per second rather than 1000. While we're on the subject of landscaping, nukes will also do the job. The question you might ask yourself is, what can you actually do with this information? Unfortunately, the answer is very little, although it is actually possible to dig a channel big enough to allow ships through two separated seas on something like Supreme Straits. Imagine the situation. One of your sea players is way ahead and doing an amazing job. The other is struggling. You fire off your nuclear canal generation strike, allowing one sea player to help the other. The chat erupts into cheers and songs are written about your performance. You then die to an amphibious flanking attack because you spent all of your resources on nuke launchers and not on units, but let's forget about that last bit and all admit if we saw this in a game we would be pretty impressed. There's also something worth knowing about mutually assured destruction. Anti-nuke launchers do have a short cooldown between shots, and it is possible to overwhelm one even if it technically has enough missiles stockpiled to do the job. It's dependent on map size, but it can take as few as 6 or 7 simultaneous nukes to get the job done. I think there's just one takeaway from this. If you start to get well into the late game, build yourself a backup anti-nuke. Occasionally you'll be very happy you did. Earlier I mentioned that repair speed is based on build cost. The number of health points repaired per second is calculated from a combination of this and the unit's maximum health. This means that units with high health and low build cost are very quick to repair. We could possibly use this to our advantage. Does this mean that when backed by 25 construction turrets, a hardened metal storage can tank 2400 DPS? Not quite, but a decoy fusion reactor certainly can. It's also tall enough to block incoming projectiles, but short enough that pulsars, beamers and overwatches can fire over the top of it. It's also worth thinking about repair mechanics when it comes to structures that have an open and a closed mode. Forcing something like a pulsar into its shell might seem like an odd decision, but if you're being attacked from outside its line of sight and you don't need its damage at the time, then it might be better to just turn the thing off until you can deal with the attackers another way. This here's a common defensive position. Our lovely pulsar is being bombarded by some heavy rocket bots from outside of its line of sight. Even with 6 construction turrets assigned to repair it, it will still die. However, we don't need to fire it this second. The beamers are handling the grunt spam, so we can just turn it off for the moment. Now our 6 turrets can easily keep up with the repairs. Even if the enemy brings up a 3rd, 4th and 5th heavy rocket bot, our turrets can still out-repair the DPS. They will start to struggle if more arrive, but this takes time. Time we can use to deploy a counter to those pesky rocket bots. Finally, if you want to learn more about the game and its strategies and tactics, then it helps to know where to look. For general info, the official BAR website is pretty good. It has a comprehensive unit catalogue and plenty of other useful articles. The official Discord is also a great source of information. It's full of like-minded people and has an academy channel that's very useful for new player questions. Like a lot of communities, you will of course get a lot of opinion presented as fact, and your own mileage will vary, but as long as you bear this in mind, then it's endlessly useful. There are also some decent YouTube channels with some BAR content, so let's talk about those. One of the first you'll probably see come up is Drongo. His videos are entertaining, but it's probably best not to try and blindly replicate all of his strategies in your game. He likes to push things to their absolute theoretical limits to see what will happen. It's a lot of fun and pretty interesting, but some of it's a bit sensationalist and it's not the kind of thing that's going to work in most regular games. From a learning point of view, I recommend avoiding videos that make big claims and feature one or more red arrows in the thumbnail. Say no to superlatives. Fastest APHIS? Nope. Quickest T2 lab? Nope. Greatest this or strongest that? Not for me. Instead, for a decent mixture of gameplay, commentary and information, I recommend Roguelike and Super Kitowiec. You can learn a lot by watching some games, especially when everything is put into proper context by a knowledgeable commentator, and both of these channels do this very well. They've also got a decent amount of tutorial content, so I highly recommend both. If you do enjoy watching games, then BrightWorksGaming is another good port of call. I think he's one of the better casters when it comes to Beyond All Reason, so check him out if you like that sort of thing. For some pretty deep and involved theory that has been tested by a skilled player, you can't go far wrong with Conquer and his Art of BAR series. It's only got half a dozen videos, but every single one of them is well worth a watch. For some guides aimed at newer players, Tick Army has also started to upload some content, including some useful topics like blueprints and build orders, so check that out too. If you're too lazy to type, then don't worry. I'll link all of these channels down in the description. Okay, I think that's enough of an information dump for one day. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button, and if you've got any questions, pop them in a comment or on the Discord and I'll do my best to reply. And as usual, if you want more of this sort of thing, then subscribe to my channel and I hope to see you back for the next one.